Final Fantasy VII Rebirth nearly killed me. Alright, I'm just kidding. It was actually my heart that did that. Hello, my name is Zachary Kusch, and welcome to a video I should have made like a year ago. Sorry about that. My aforementioned heart almost killed me. Apparently there was a hole in it for when your mom stopped returning my calls, and it sent blood clots into my brain. For those of you who aren't in the know, a blood clot going to your brain's bad news. It's called a stroke. Then some neurologists showed me an MRI scan of my brain, and they told me that I had apparently shrugged off 6 such strokes before the 7th one compelled me to crash my car into 2 other cars. Luckily, all the people involved were okay, including me, but our cars certainly were not. But that's why they make more cars. Fortunately for my many followers, and unfortunately for my many foes, I have not only survived, but thrived. I mean, I'm still gonna die, and statistically speaking, it's gonna be my heart that kills me. But not before I've had a chance to review Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Dude, I feel like I've been reborn. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the second part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy project. Dude, 7 is the number of strokes I've had, and 3 is the number of cars I crashed while having a stroke. And some parts of this game definitely make me feel like I'm having a stroke, but the game itself, should I love it? Is it a good kind of stroke? Well, before we nestle down and dig our way into that, it's best to reveal my biases so that you might incorporate such things into your evaluation of my essayed opinion. I love the original Final Fantasy VII. It's not only my favorite video game, but also my favorite work of fiction of all time. I have its plot, its characters, its world, its themes, its music, its battle system, its PS1 era full motion video, and its terribly translated English script tattooed so thoroughly on my brain that not even 7 strokes could damage the memory. Final Fantasy VII is one of the few things I carry throughout my life which I deem older than me. I have no definitive memory of my first playthrough of Final Fantasy VII. It just kind of exists monolithically in my mind. I loved it even before I became aware of myself or became aware of any of the reasons that I loved it, and I would kiss each of its 9 playable characters right on their disgusting mouths. I love this stupid, ridiculous game, and it makes me happy every time I think about it. Then they remade it, split that remake into 3 constituent parts, and have so far milked 4 game discs and 2 video game consoles out of me. For those of you interested in hearing me drone on for a feature-length film's worth of video content regarding Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy Part 1, Final Fantasy VII Remake, feel free to watch this video and comment about how the audio sucks. If it makes you feel any better, I used some of my Christmas money to purchase a new microphone that I'm using to talk into right now. Feel free to leave a comment below telling me that this microphone sucks too. For any folk who are both context hungry and bereft of time to watch a feature-length video about some guy rambling about his opinions about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1, Final Fantasy VII Remake, let me summarize. I liked Final Fantasy VII Remake a lot, but I did not love it. Perhaps I'm waiting until the trilogy's conclusion before I'll let myself love it, as I have both enough figurative and literal holes in my heart for one lifetime, thank you very much. But so far, this series, which has cost a bunch of Japanese people I'll never meet tens of thousands of hours and hundreds of thousands of yen, has been pretty good, though I'm not without my scruples. And me, being the kind of person I am, I have systematized my scruple judgment into what I like to call the 3-strike rule. When judging a work of fiction, especially an adaptation, I organize egregious missteps into one of 3 categories: character infidelity, thematic infidelity, and a catastrophic error. Of course, not all errors constitute a strike. After all, not even the Lord of the Rings movies are perfect. But some errors are so detrimental to the work as a whole that it will make me consider a fiction breakup. Thus, the 3-strike rule. If a work accrues 3 strikes, I'll fiction dump it. I fiction dumped Game of Thrones in Season 6. I still haven't seen Season 7 and 8. And speaking of which, that's 3 strikes for an entire body of work, not for each individual installment. The entire series Game of Thrones gets to share a collective 3 strikes. It got 2 strikes in Season 5, and then it got its final strike in Season 6. Similarly, all 3 games in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy must share a budget of 3 strikes. The sins of the previous installments will taint their successors. Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1, Final Fantasy VII Remake, despite earning many of my commendations, did indeed earn a strike from me. The inclusion of the Arbiters of Fate, what I call the plot ghosts, constitute a catastrophic error for reasons I elucidated in the aforementioned feature-length Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1, Final Fantasy VII Remake video review. Feel free to watch that and leave a comment telling me that the audio is bad. Otherwise, with such context established, let's discuss Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Did it get a strike too? No. Did I love it? Also no. Let's start with the positives. Number 1, these towns are incredible. The section of Final Fantasy VII's story, which is directly adapted in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, is the part of Final Fantasy VII's story where you walk to towns, enter said towns, and complete that town's list of objectives, most of which center around fleshing out one of the little buddies you've collected in your Final Fantasy VII Buddy Brigade. As such, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth took what these precious, pre-rendered, hand-drawn backgrounds hinted towards, and rendered them into beautiful portraits that you get to walk around in. I love each and every one of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's renditions of classic Final Fantasy VII towns, and you even gotta put a frankly not that fun card game in these towns to make me want to walk around in them. Just like, look at them. I love the stunning view of the Sister Ray in Junon. I love that Cosmo Canyon is a weird hippie tourist attraction. I love this slick, modernized gold saucer casino. I love walking around Nibelheim and eating weirdly angled sandwiches. OG Final Fantasy VII's little town maps are burned into my brain with such ferocity that not even 7 strokes could singe the memory. And walking around these Final Fantasy VII Rebirth towns feels like the ultimate theme park built for exactly me, minus all the stuff that makes theme parks terrible, like other people. Number 2, walking around. As I just got finished saying, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth took what Remake promised with its cute little towns and its big wide open fields and dialed that up to 11. From Calm to the Chocobo Farm to Under Junon to Junon proper to Costa del Sol to North Corral to the Gold Saucer to Gongaga.
Me? Gongaga.
To Cosmo Canyon to Nibelheim. This game has some hot towns in it, and I love walking around these towns, and I don't even need nonsense side quests as an excuse to walk around these places. I can just walk around them doing nothing. That's good enough for me. And just when you were starting to think that I'm only in this for the town walking, I love walking around the wilderness too. I love walking the grasslands, and also the lands around Junon, or this little cute coastal area near Costa del Sol, or crossing Mount Coral, or walking around this desert, or this jungle, or this canyon, or this spiky rock nonsense area. Rocks don't look like that. In fact, in my second playthrough, where the game mercifully allowed me to import all my side quest save data, I committed to literally walking everywhere, unless there was some kind of story reason for me to run, and I only engaged with riding birds or strangely configured monster trucks when the map design necessitated such things, and I had a wildly good time doing so. Square Enix employs some excellent artists who excellently crafted these zones, and it's a joy to just traverse them. Walking around in a video game is a viable way to engage with it, and I wish that more games had the confidence to just let their big, beautiful worlds breathe and let us get lost in this atmosphere. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work, guys. Number 3, Nito Torpedo Story Editions. The Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy is an adaptation of the original Final Fantasy VII, and like all adaptations, it mandates some adaptational changes in order to fit its new style. And that's fine. Remember, you get to change whatever you want in an adaptation, it's just that the changes you make had better be good. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in particular has made a bunch of wise adaptational changes, and I want to talk about them. Here's the changes that I really like. I love all these scenes we get with our whole party and their silly little party banter. I love that the game takes these little filler traversal moments like the Mithril Mines or Mount Coral and makes them about our friends hanging out. I love getting to the next inn in the next town because I know I'm going to get to watch another Bud scene with my favorite fictional buds. I love the new buds we got. I love Kate Sith. I love how annoyed everyone but Eris is with him. I loved pretty much all of the Gongaga chapter.
Me? Gongaga.
Especially when I absolved myself of the obligation to engage with any of its side content. I love chilling and hanging out with Cissnei. I like Cissnei, and Cissnei's like literally the only interesting thing to come out of Crisis Core. That's right, I'm a Crisis Core hater, and I think Crisis Core is non-canon. Let me tell you all the Final Fantasy VII games that I consider canon. Ready? Here they are. But anyway, back to Cissnei. I'm glad that she gets a little moment to hang out with us and hint about the corpse that's haunting this story. A corpse that's more interesting as a corpse and not a guy with a nonsense pocket dimension side story. Thank you very much. I love what they did with Cid. I like that Cid gets more bonding time with us as our taxi driver, essentially. And I like that he likes Eris best of all. Eris is great, and everybody likes Eris. I love that we've got more of a reason to go back to Nibelheim, and I love that Kate Sith is more integrated into this story. I love the scene with Eris on the water tower where she again outs herself as a Cloud Tea shipper. I love Vincent, and I love that his cutscenes are cheesy, because let's face it, Vincent is at least a little bit stupid. And I even love his gratuitous boss fight. In fact, Vincent's gratuitous boss fight is one of only 2 gratuitous boss fights that I liked. The other one was Roche's. And you know what? Final Fantasy VII Rebirth really sold me on Roche, and Roche gets to be in my characters from the expanded Final Fantasy VII universe that I don't hate. Also, I was lukewarm on Roche in Part 1 because it's like, where are you going with this guy? But the fact that things don't work out for Roche and he becomes one of them grumbly hooded boys destined to die some unceremonious death in the Northern Crater in Part 3 is something that I didn't really see coming. And, when it happened, it made me feel an emotion. Gold star, Square Enix. Please don't chicken out of killing him in the 3rd game. Please don't put in a side quest where you save and rehabilitate Roche and then he hangs out on the Highwind and you play some nonsense card game with him. I won't complete that side quest. I'll get the Roche sad ending. I'll do it on purpose, no matter how sad you make it. Some stories need sad endings, and some characters need to die unceremoniously, and some characters are more interesting if they're dead. I love the bonkers balls to the wall Temple of the Ancients as a multi-party dungeon to end all multi-party dungeons, cause like, look man, I really love multi-party dungeons. And Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's multi-party dungeons are dope AF. Speaking of, number 4, these multi-party dungeons are dope AF. The Mithril Mines, climbing Mount Coral, hitting up the Gungaga reactor.
Me?
Gungaga.
Messing around in Nibelheim, and especially the aforementioned Temple of the Ancients, have all been revamped into multi-party dungeons, and I think that's great. Party-based RPGs have honestly been starving for this kind of thing since their inception, and I'm glad that somebody's finally capitalizing on it. It especially works in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth because honestly, the game's combat is at its best when the design team knows which party members they're designing enemies around. And it's nice to have characters who don't normally get a lot of screen time together go get some screen time together, like Eris and Tifa, or Red and Barrett, or Yuffie and anybody. Excellent work, y'all. I hope you waylay Part 3 in a second helping of such multi-party dungeons. And maybe we can even have a triple party dungeon or 2 in there. Wouldn't that be fun? Number 5. I love all these stupid vending machines. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's world is a world of vending machines. There's a vending machine on every street corner. There's vending machines on desolated mountains. There's vending machines in ancient ruins where deeply voiced ghosts live in an agonizing suspension between life and death. There's vending machines in these ancient gravity-defying magic ruins. There's a vending machine in Vincent's coffin room. Vincent hibernates in that coffin for like 30 years. And while perhaps a future Lucrezia's Cave flashback will elucidate whether or not the vending machine was already present and installed on the day that Vinboy decided to get himself to sleep in that coffin, but all I can imagine right now are the Shinra equivalent of Pepsi drivers scratching their heads at the work order to install that vending machine in the coffin room in the secret basement of this abandoned mansion. It's very clearly powered on, and given the Shinra Mansion's Victorian influences, it is safe to assume that it was not wired for electricity at the time of its construction, meaning that somebody had to wire power down here to turn the vending machine on. And those of us in the know, spoiler alert, we know that that Hojo scientist guy spends a couple of years experimenting on Cloud and Zack down here, so perhaps the vending machine was installed for their benefit. If so, maybe it was installed in Vincent's coffin room as a joke. The Vincent Render promotional material identifies Vincent as a security guard. Perhaps he's the security guard for this specific vending machine. The idea that Vincent is still on Shinra Company payroll for defending this sole vending machine is beautiful to me. I'm imagining Vincent waking up from his slumber every now and again to pop by that vending machine and have the in-universe equivalent of a Pepsi. That's right. Potions taste like Pepsi. That's the new little piece of lore that I've added to the Final Fantasy VII universe. And then, you know, like some poor minimum wage worker has to come by and periodically fill the vending machine for this purpose. And like sometimes Vincent is out and about when that guy drops by. And, you know, they share a Pepsi and they have a little chat.
So oh, do you eat? What do you eat?
Well, I keep not eating and not dying, so I guess I don't have to eat.
Huh.
Number 6. Here's literally my favorite part in the whole story. Are you ready for it? Here it is.
So, this Zach guy, you still like him?
Wow. You went there, huh? Maybe. He's never given me a reason not to.
Listen, man. Come here. Come closer. I gotta tell you about why I love this scene so much. It's because if their situations were reversed, that is 100% a question that Eris would ask Cloud. Cloud out-Eris'd Eris in this scene, and I love it. Eris's main function in this story is as a paragon of emotional honesty. Seeing as Final Fantasy VII positions emotional honesty as its chiefest virtue, and each of our buddies in the Buddy Brigade embark on some kind of journey where they travel from a place of emotional dishonesty to emotional honesty, and the ending of the original game literally has a man sword murder his own childishly conceived idealized self, little moments like this are what I like to call a big deal. In terms of character development, Cloud is learning to be more emotionally honest, and Eris is his main model for emotional honesty, so he's mimicking her behavior at her. It's precious. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth features beautiful graphics, breathtaking cutscenes, and loads and loads and loads of boss battles, and side quests, and boss battles, and chocobo racing, and boss battles. And just when you got tired of a boss battle, here's 2 more boss battles. Here's another boss battle. But despite all that, it's literally just this kind of stuff that I've wanted. All the battles and the quests and the noise and the big cutscenes, I look at it and my brain goes,
Ooh, neat!
Then it slips right out of my brain and puddles on the floor. But this stuff, these tiny, insular, punctuated moments, these are what stick with me. And they stick with me so hard that not even 7 strokes could kill off the connection. I would love this game if it was just mostly stuff like this. More stuff like this, please. It's the little things that make this game. Number 7. The little things. There are a bunch of little tiny touches in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that I'd like to highlight. These are the precious moments I play the game for. I love how chill and cool Sephiroth is in the Nibelheim flashback. He really does seem like a laid-back guy a 16-year-old idiot would look up to and emulate. I like his little exchanges with Cloud and Tifa where he is definitely aware that he's talking to people who are half his age, and he is definitely adjusting his personality in response to that. I love little scenes like this.
Well done, Trooper.
Cause I know who that is. I love that Cloud's mom says,
Run away. You have to leave. You have to live.
which is what Sephiroth said to Cloud after the Mako Reactor 1 job.
Run, Cloud. Run away. You have to leave. You have to live.
It's a nice little bookend, and I definitely think that Part 1 was originally supposed to end with the Nibelheim flashback, which would make sense as the game would bookend with a horrific Mako Reactor arson that involves a person saying, "Run, Cloud, run away." But I've already said my piece about that in my video about Remake. Feel free to watch that and leave a comment telling me that the audio is bad. I like it when Barrett is like,
Only dumbasses believe that shit.
and then Eris is all like,
Does that make me a dumbass?
Eris is great. I love it when Eris gives Cloud some old friend advice up here on this tower.
I would have given anything to have a friend when I was growing up. Don't take her for granted.
I love that Eris is low-key a Clouty shipper, and I sure hope that annoys the pants off Clarith shippers, cause they're real annoying. Hi Clarith shipper. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you for getting it this far. I just wanted to remind you that Eris would never pick you, because you smell. Take a shower, man. Learn how to like yourself. I also really wish that after this exchange,
She's gonna hate me for this.
Cloud had been like, I'd kill to have my mom mad at me. Don't take her for granted, okay? That's my Cloud voice. That's the voice I auditioned for the part with, and as you can see, I didn't get it. I like when Red 13 points upwards with his tail in Mithril Mines. That's cute. I love watching Cloud fumble Tifa in the Under Junon Inn. This guy's got no riz. I love the Junon sequence. I love just looking at this place. I love the Step On Me Mommy drill sergeant, and I hope she gets to live with us full time on the Highwind later. Just don't make her play a dumb card game or something with us, please. We can just talk to her. I'm fine with just talking to people. I love exploring the town and talking to our buds in the Buddy Brigade and finding the 7th Infantry who are from Midgar, and I hope they help us run around Midgar in Part 3. I love that Rufus knows our buds are infiltrating Junon, and he just invites them up to his podium to be like,
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let's stop fighting each other. Now that this whole Sephiroth thing is happening.
and I hate that they threw this into the dumpster like immediately afterward. It's like, why'd you even bring it up, man? I love climbing Mount Coral. I love that Yuffie leaves these little drawings all over the mountain. I love this dumb little dance sequence when you get to the Gold Saucer, which is, by the way, extremely weird to play if you turn off the music for the sake of video capture.
What the?
I love Kate Sith. I've long been a Kate Sith defender, and I love his little animations, and I love his little accent, and I love it when he does this to Cissnei. I still don't ever put him in my party, but I love him. I hate his dumb little dungeon in Nibelheim, but I love him. I actually really liked Solemn Gus, and I love his little theme song. Get down to the night, Solemn Gus. I don't like doing any of the dumb missions for him, but I like him, Solemn Gus the guy. I like Esther, and like this might be a little personal, but I am like extremely attracted to this model for reasons I can't articulate. Like, have you ever had your monkey neurons activate in a way that alarms you? Like, Lord above, absolve me of my sinful thoughts. I love the Gongaga story section about as much as I hated this map and hated doing side quests here.
Gongaga.
I actually really love Cissnei, and I'm glad they gave her a little baby role in this game. I hope she comes and lives with us on the Highwind later. I love the whole scene they have with Zach's parents at Zach's parents' house for reasons I already spoke about, but let's watch the scene again.
So, this Zach guy, you still like him?
Wow. You went there, huh? Maybe. He's never given me a reason not to.
I like the little multi-party dungeon in the Gongaga reactor.
Me? Gongaga.
I sorta like Tifa's little excursion into the Afterlife Ocean, but also like I feel like this is blowing the load a little too early. She's also like way too forgiving and way too unalarmed that Cloud literally tried to kill her. I don't know, man. There should have been more of a rift between these two. But I do love that Cloud breaks a little bit in this scene, and I wish we got more scenes of this kind of vulnerability from him. I love that Yuffie and Kate Sith are Cloud T shippers. That's cute. I love that Sid shows up to be our taxi driver. Sid definitely needed more stuff to do in this adaptation, and he definitely needed more of a reason to run off with these jokers on their death-defying globe adventure, and we sort of got that. He at least gets more screen time. I love hanging out in Cosmo Canyon and going to Bugenhagen's exposition machine. I love the stark difference you can see in Nanaki versus Red 13, and I like that Nanaki puts on his Red 13 voice sometimes even after this. I like that Barrett specifically immediately stops calling Red 13 and starts calling him Nanaki. I like that they get to go on a Cave of the Gi adventure together, and Nanaki needs to freaking chill with all this Barrett hate. Barrett is literally the best guy. Barrett is literally the best character. Barrett literally has the best voice actor. I love this man, and you better love him too, you rat dog who isn't that important. Barrett is way more important to this story than you. You deserve a cut. You're the Legolas of this story, and being the Legolas of this story means that you're not that important. But my boy Barrett is Samwise Gamgee, and anybody who's even looked at a trailer for Lord of the Rings knows that Samwise Gamgee is the bravest of all hobbitses, okay? Like, screw you, Red 13. I'm glad your dad's a statue. I love this little inclusion they made that the Gi ghosts made the black materia because they're trying to blow up the world and kill themselves. That's neat, and I really liked going to visit their little ghost camp. I'm honestly curious about where they're going to go with these ghosts. These ghosts better show up somehow in part 3. Dude, wouldn't it be funny if the ghosts came and lived with us on the Highwind and you could play card games with the ghosts? He's so dumb. And they're like,
We found a reason to live. It's so we can play this card game on the Highwind.
that'd be funny. I'd love that. I loved that Kate Sith got some stuff to do in Nibelheim, even though I hate his little Kate Sith only dungeon. I actually loved the gratuitous Vincent Galleon Beast boss fight and his ridiculous Bloodborne rendition of Vincent's theme. Take a listen.
One clean shot is all I need. Golden opportunity right here.
as I mentioned before, I also love this little fight with Roche. I hope we get to see Roche tragically die in the Whirlwind Maze in Part 3. Please don't chicken out of this, Square Enix. I love it when Sid yells at everybody as the tiny Bronco is crashing. And I love this little exchange on the dock with all 9 members of our 9-member buddy brigade. Especially since this scene didn't happen, and so I guess this is just the only scene we're gonna get with all 9 characters in it. I like it when Barrett's all like,
"Another loner. As if one wasn't enough of a pain in my ass."
and then Cloud's all like,
You mean me?
and even though I thought she was extremely irritating and a borderline sex criminal in Remake, please don't act this way towards a person in real life unless you're already in a relationship with them. I did enjoy seeing Jesse's ghost in the Gold Saucer. This is how you handle a dead character. Have there be little hints and reminders that they once lived and occupied these spaces and had dreams and hopes and desires. And then have a character who remembered them take a little moment to mourn their absence. Don't put them in a pocket dimension that may or may not be real, and don't have them call us on the ghost phone. The power of the dead comes from their silence and their absence. That silence can't be felt if they're around talking, and that absence can't be felt if, like, look, there they are, here's a little cutscene with them in a pocket dimension. Also, I love how bad Cloud's line delivery in the Gold Saucer date is.
I, by the grace of the goddess.
That's hilarious. I love that the Temple of the Ancients is this big, wacky, otherworldly, multi-party dungeon, even though I'd be the first to tell you that it goes on way too long and it's got too many fights in it. And wobbling your joystick around to make Eris perform these little wobbly livestream tricks is really kind of silly. Also, they chickened out of killing Sang. Kill Sang. He doesn't have anything else to do in this story. I know it was like kinda sorta like ambiguous whether or not Sang died in the original, and I know that like if you're a weirdo who reads the original Japanese, like it mentions that he's just injured but not like dead, not necessarily dead, and then he showed up in Advent Children. But like people gotta die in a story that has like life threatening circumstances in it. You should have killed Sang. Shang should have died. He should have bled out right here in front of us, and then we could all be like,
Oh snap. They done killed Sang. Who are they gonna kill next?
you know what I mean? You kill Sang. He's got nothing else to do in the story. Just kill him. But anyway, I really love all the little flashback sequences you have with all your party members, except Cloud, where they have to relive the worst parts of their lives, and I especially love that they didn't make you fight anything in any of these. I also love that just when you think Cloud isn't going to get one, he does, and the memory he relives is where Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse died. Cloud actually really liked Biggs and Wedge and sort of Jesse quite a lot, and he's actually really sad that they died. And these moments were actually a lot more traumatizing for him than he can even admit to himself. Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse are actually more interesting as characters who die and then whose deaths haunt our surviving characters, kind of like some other characters who die in this story. And one of the things I really like about Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse is that after they die, we don't see their ghosts anywhere. I really hope that somebody else who dies doesn't have their ghost be popping in all the time in Part 3. I love chasing Eris around in all the spooky vines and being like,
Eris.
that's fun. Controllable helplessness is fun, and I hope we get to do some more of it later. I love the look of the ancient city, and I'm sad that we didn't get to like spend 2 hours just walking around in it and soaking in the dreadful atmosphere. I like it when Vincent's all like,
She needs you. Go.
I think Vincent secretly wants to be a bud in our buddy brigade, and that's well, I liked how everybody, or just about everybody, starts this Genova boss fight with their limit meters filled. I liked this look that Barrett and Tifa gave each other in the ending cutscene. Well, that's all the stuff I liked, which means that we get to get into... Well, I didn't like all the stuff in Rebirth. In fact, I disliked enough of it that I don't love it. Here's what I disliked, here we go. Number 1, you gotta fight too much. I think this point is best illustrated by 2 separate occasions where some ghosts interrupt their own exposition monologues to make us fight something. And then once the battle wraps up, everybody just kind of returns to the exposition. And look, I really enjoy the combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's flashy and it's fun, and I like how the characters' pre-baked movesets match their little baby personalities. But these fights are more interesting visually than they are mechanically, and they don't substitute for character drama. I think there's a vast paranoia infecting a lot of games where they think that if they don't give us something to kill like every 30 seconds, then we're gonna get bored and turn the game off. Look, non-violence isn't boring. It's repetition that's boring. Tedium is boring. Excess is boring. And maybe I'm just a freak weirdo, but as I stated previously, I had an extraordinarily good time just walking around in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's world space, and part of that reason I think is that the game cannot stop itself from throwing fights at you like all the time, and I just desperately wanted like a little bit of downtime where we just got to chill and hang out and soak in the atmosphere. And like having all these combat challenges with all these Nito Torpedo combat challenge rewards is a neat idea, but they're not fun. They're not challenging in an engrossing way, they're challenging in an obstinate way. These aren't carefully designed combat encounters, they're enemies with big health bars and high defenses who do not execute their attack patterns with any kind of synchronicity or discernible pattern. And all the particle effects and animations make it really, really difficult to tell what's even happening. What's even happening? Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's combat is interesting in its spectacle and how it characterizes its party members, not in its raw difficulty or challenge. Its materia system is intriguing when you equip the characters with a materia loadout that you think matches their characterization. Like you pick the materia that you think this guy would have. You don't pick materia for the sake of efficiency or for cheesing enemies that are just like obstinately hard. The thing about efficiency is that it isn't interesting. And like things in real life don't need to be interesting because real life has like body material consequences in it. But when I engage in a piece of fiction, efficiency doesn't matter. When I die in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, I don't die in real life. I can just try again. So like, I don't have to be as efficient as possible, and things in this world don't need to be efficient, they need to be interesting. And sometimes difficulty is interesting in a video game, especially in video game combat. You know what I'm about to talk about. I'm about to talk about Bloodborne. Everybody loves Bloodborne, including me. I love Bloodborne, but Bloodborne goes all into that combat system because the combat system is what we're there for. Also, I can tell what's happening. The story and the lore and all that stuff and all these item descriptions, like that's all neat, but it's there to serve the combat. It's there to contextualize the combat and make that combat more interesting. In Bloodborne, the story serves the combat, whereas in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it's the combat that serves the story. The story is what we're here for. And it rips holes inside of my heart whenever the story has to bend itself over backwards just to like accommodate all these boss fights that we didn't need. Stop making me fight the Turks, man. Don't make me fight Rufus again. That was a really cool big moment in Remake, and now it's just like going down to the McDonald's drive-thru. You McDonald's drive-thru the Rufus boss fight, man. The three main pillars of engagement in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, as best as I understand it, are story, world traversal, and combat. And it feels like the game's makers are so paranoid that we're gonna get bored and shut off the game and leave mean comments telling them that it wasn't worth the price of admission if there like wasn't enough combat in it. And so like they're forcing combat to work overtime when it doesn't need to. Combat in these Final Fantasy VII Remake games should be like the sick guitar solo that closes out Freebird. And what makes that guitar solo so fun is that you have to sit through like 5 minutes of love ballad nonsense to get there. Imagine if they shoved like 18 more guitar solos into the ballad section of Freebird, and that's what Rebirth kind of feels like all of the time. Number 2, none of this side content is worth doing. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth primarily exists as an HBO prestige episodic adaptation of the middle events of Final Fantasy VII's plot, which on occasion, and generally at one's leisure, one sets down to engage with a variety of nonsense side content, from which one might accrue a variety of nonsense prizes. Some of these prizes are even pretty good. However, none of these prizes are so good that one can't play the game without them, and frankly, none of this side content is interesting enough that doing it feels like doing something that's worth doing. Listen, I played all of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's side content except for Queen's Blood because like I have to draw the line somewhere. And there's only 3 slightly interesting things that happen in all of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's side content, and I'm going to tell you what they are. Ready? Here they are. Number 1, the guy who helps you in Calm's Inn later shows up in a side mission as a hooded guy, and that's real sad. Number 2, Tifa and Barrett reminisce about their deceased comrades Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, which is something that should have happened in the main story when all the characters sit around the Cosmo Candle and think about their lives. And number 3, Leslie shows up in a side quest and he still sucks, which I enjoyed because I hate Leslie and I desperately wanted him to die, and I desperately hope that Square Enix kills him in the Wutai mission that you're gonna have to do in part 3. Please let him die in Wutai, Square Enix. Please. Don't let him live and get back with his beloved and move in with us on the High Wind and then play a nonsense card game with us. Just kill him. Make him die. Even if it's an option. Like, just put in an option that I can select that has Leslie die. Please. I desperately want to see this guy's corpse. Please. I will pay an additional $10 for a Final Fantasy VII reunion if there's pick an option that lets Leslie die. Look, I get it. This thing was real expensive. This is a very expensive game, and most people think that bigger means it's better. And it's a really cool thing to bring up in your marketing material to be like,
Oh, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has like 100 hours of side quests in it.
but also, like, why use up so much time from so many developers' finite lives to make this stuff when literally walking from one set piece to another is vastly more interesting and vastly more engaging and vastly more in line with the pacing of this story? I feel like so many games feel this sick obligation to have as much stuff as possible in it, and it's just like, this stuff isn't very good or interesting. Final Fantasy VII's broader world is not as interesting as the journey its characters are undergoing, and that journey alone is worth the price of admission. Look, if you haven't played this game yet, this is what I earnestly recommend. Purchase Remake and Rebirth on Steam whenever they come on sale. Then download a save file off a modding website where some other sucker has already 100%ed the game. Then download a mod that lets you just buy all the materia and all the accessories and equipment you want, so you can just load out your heroes with whatever you want and give them a materia loadout that you think fits their characterization. That's actually really fun. Then load up Remake and start the story. Play the game until the game compels you to go to bed. Each time you go to bed, be like,
I am done playing Final Fantasy VII for the day.
and don't play it again until the next day. Only do the story critical path. Ignore all of the side content, like all of it. Yeah, there's side content in the first game that lets you pick a dress. It's not that important, okay? Look, listen, this is my favorite story. Do you understand? This is my favorite story that is set in my favorite fictional universe with my favorite characters. And I'm telling you, you don't have to do any of the side content. Just do the story critical stuff. It's a great time. You're going to have a great time. I guarantee it. And like, okay, look, man. If you really want to shove all this stuff into the game so that in a press release you can be like,
Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has 100 hours of side content in it.
that's fine. Just like, come on, man. Don't make me do any of the side content. Number 3, don't make me do any of the side content. I don't want to play Queen's Blood. Stop making me do it. Don't put a Queen's Blood tournament on the cargo ship and then make me play it. And yeah, I know there's a lady you can talk to behind this counter to skip this tournament, and the game's all like,
Oh, look how excited your friends are to play Queen's Blood. But you don't gotta play it if you don't want to. You can go over there to the Buzzkill bar and press the Buzzkill opt-out button. Dozens of Japanese people worked unpaid overtime to the detriment of both their physical and mental health to complete this tournament sequence. But you don't have to do it.
and yeah, man, I couldn't opt out hard enough. Also, I really hate this lady. I hate it when people are abrasive and standoffish for no reason. Behaving this way isn't cool, and it's not brave or empowering or interesting. It's childish and obnoxious. My 6-year-old nephew acts this way. I hate this lady. I hate her. You'd better not stick her on the Highwind in Part 3, Squeenix. I hope she instead dies alone and unloved in the Junon weapon attack. Please kill her. And then, once you get to Costa del Sol, the game puts a gun against your head and says,
Don't play all these carnival nonsense games. You're having a good time. Isn't this a good time?
hey, look, listen, you know what instantly makes something not a good time? The obligation to do it. And like, look, I love character hangout stuff. I really do, especially in games. Especially when those games include my beloved Final Fantasy VII Buddy Brigade. But like, this scene on the beach where we can just relax and look at the sunset and have a little conversation with our buds and check in on how their little character arcs are cooking, that's the kind of stuff I want. These scenes are simple, straightforward, earnest, honest, and a bunch of other positive adjectives. I just want to talk to these people, okay? I just like talking to them. And like, yeah, sure, they're there when you're engaging in these nonsense carnival games, and they're there when you're doing these nonsense side quests, but somebody being there is not the same thing as talking to them. Like, character interaction and character growth are where it's at, you know? When they don't fumble it Number 4, they fumbled my boy Barrett's character growth. As I said before, Final Fantasy VII concerns itself with the theme of emotional honesty. At the start of our story, each of our 9 buddies in the Buddy Brigade are putting on a front. Their arcs include them shedding this front and becoming more emotionally honest, usually after a story segment which concerns them and their past trauma. And Barrett is very special to me because he's our first buddy in the Buddy Brigade to undergo such a journey and complete his character arc. I love the scene in which Barrett confronts dying, a dark reflection of himself, and his literal mirror image. I love this quiet, reflective moment Barrett has at Cosmo Canyon, where at last he admits to both Cloud and himself that he never actually cared so much about the planet as much as he just wanted to hurt the people who destroyed his life. And in the blind pursuit of such revenge, he ended up a major factor in the destruction of other people's lives. He then resolves to protect the planet in earnest. Not for any grand philosophical reasons, but simply for Marlene. He fights so that Marlene has a world to grow up in, and so that he might earn the right to call himself her father. That's really sweet. A lesser story would have killed Barrett off after this. But one of the things I really like about Final Fantasy VII is that Barrett sticks around and becomes something of a cheerleader for the other characters, with one character in particular. I love this moment where Cloud is brought low, and it's Barrett who picks him back up again. Barrett imparts upon Cloud a wisdom that he himself has purchased dearly. Running away won't save you. Your demons aren't going anywhere, and they must be faced. The only way out of despair is through. And I love these tender little moments. I love that despite his tough guy veneer, Barrett is actually a sentimental, deeply reflective man, and he imparts such virtues unto his much younger friend Cloud. And I was really looking forward to seeing remakes renditions of these scenes, especially with John Eric Bentley playing Barrett. This guy rules, and he's playing the best character, and he's crushing it. I love you. John, will you be my dad? And the dying scene in Rebirth isn't terrible, but I don't like that there's this de-emphasis on the parallels between the two men. And that's traded in for this over-the-top anime action set piece. And what's going on with these Shinra soldiers showing up out of nowhere and giving dying this Hollywood self-sacrifice scene? Is he supposed to be redeemed? Is it supposed to be that in the end, for all his anger and grief, he chose to be Barrett's friend again? What is this supposed to mean? What am I supposed to be feeling? What am I supposed to be taking away from this besides just
oh, gunshots. Ooh, robot.
The meaning in the original was pretty clear and pretty solid, but what is this? And also, okay, look, listen, this is supposed to be an emotionally harrowing scene, and you're undercutting that emotionality by putting in a nonsense boss fight right here, okay? And this boss fight is so long, but by the time we get back to the drama, I've kind of moved on from that moment. And it's not hitting me as hard anymore. But oh well, I can just write this off as a fluke. I mean, it's not like there's any other emotional moments in the story that get undercut by having too ridiculous a boss fight happen in the middle of them. But anyway, how are those other 2 Barrett scenes I mentioned? Well, they didn't happen. And look man, I played everything in this game except the Queen's Blood stuff because even I have to draw the line somewhere. And there ain't no equivalent of these scenes anywhere. Where are they? Maybe they're saving them for a different context? Kind of like how the Gandalf
All we have to do is decide what to do with the time that is given to us
speech was moved from the 2nd chapter of the book, when they're still in the Shire, to the Mines of Moria just before, spoiler alert, Gandalf gets murdered by the Balrog. And yeah, in retrospect, I do think that this speech works better here in the adaptation than it does in the original, as Frodo has been on this journey long enough for it to grow wearisome, and earlier he got stabbed by a Morgul blade.
He's been stabbed by a Morgul blade.
And it almost made him a wraith like them.
He'll soon become a wraith like them.
And also, Gandalf is about to die, and he's pretty sure that's what's about to happen to him. So this is kind of his parting words to Frodo. This is the little wisdom he's going to give to Frodo for Frodo to carry alongside Gandalf's ghost through the rest of his terrible adventure. That's a wise adaptational change. So maybe these pivotal Barrett scenes are just being saved for later so that he can have more stuff to do in part 3. But just I don't know man, so much of this game and its boss fights and its particle effects have made me worried that precious little granular character moments like this are gonna get lost in the shuffle. Tender memories no one can ever know, lost in the mind of a man with bits of an alien parasite in his brain. Speaking of which, number 5, the Cloud Brain-Mumble scenes aren't really doing it for me. I've always found this scene in the original to be very powerful, as it's the first definite, for sure instance of Cloud's Brain-Mumbles, manifesting plainly and alarmingly for his fellows in the Buddy Brigade. And like this moment sort of happens, but gets shuffled into the Demon Wall boss fight. And it's very easy to miss. And like it feels more like a wink to the audience than something the characters in scene and in universe are responding to and are cognizant of. And you know, like there's this scene in the Gungaga reactor, and
Me? Gungaga.
Cloud does admittedly break a little bit afterwards, which I liked, but like everybody, and like Tifa especially, way too nonchalant about the fact that Cloud literally and unmistakably tried to kill her. And you know, he goes a little nutso on this soldier guy, but like, come on man. Cloud, Barret, and Tifa have littered entire floors of the Shinra building with these guys' corpses. Surely the novelty is worn off by now. And like, is killing these guys wrong or not? Our buddies have been burying these guys by the hundreds. It's weird to develop scruples about it now. And like, something is so clearly wrong with Cloud in a way that nobody seems to address. Because like, they aren't supposed to, I guess? Cloud should definitely be more alarmed at his present state, kind of like he was in the original, and his buds in the Buddy Brigade should be a bit more apprehensive towards him. And like, look, we're in such a rush to wrap things up in the Temple of the Ancients and beyond, when there's like no real reason to. There's definitely room in this story for more dramatic scenes, especially since you don't have to design, rig, animate, and implement a bunch of boss fights to accomplish that. I mean, and like, if you need things to cut to make more room for this kind of stuff, I can definitely think of some entire sections of the story in this game that can be traded in. You know, like those Zack Fair scenes that are an enormous waste of time. Number 6, the Zack Fair scenes are an enormous waste of time. The Zack Fair story feels like an abortion. I mean, in the sense that like it was aborted. I mean, like, you know, they were gonna make something and then they pulled out of doing it. You know, not like aborted like a fetus, but just like, you know, they was gonna do something here when they chickened out of doing it. That in that kind of way. That's how I meant it. Now, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I hated the plot ghosts in Part 1. And in case you haven't watched my feature-length video on Part 1, I whinged pretty hard about those plot ghosts in it. I hate them, and they don't belong here. And they really feel like a last-minute addition stapled onto this project in order to produce some kind of Sephiroth boss fight ending. My thesis was that the obvious place to end Part 1 was the Nibelheim flashback, as it not only establishes who Sephiroth is after his ghost has been showing up this whole game, and also why Cloud is so angry at him when his ghost shows up throughout the whole game. But the flashback sequence also marks a point in the story where the story shifts from being a high-paced action thriller set in a Blade Runner city to an open, chill, walk across the world game, which is about exploring our little buddies in the Buddy Brigade and getting their little character arcs going. And at some point, I suspect, Final Fantasy VII Remake's makers realized that they just didn't have the resources back in 2018 to get the story to the Nibelheim flashback in Part 1, so they just had to cobble some kind of ending together, and they were like, I don't know, there's ghosts or something at the end, you gotta go fight them. Well, I hate those ghosts, and I desperately want someone to mod them out. Mod them out, please. Fast forward to Rebirth, which now doesn't really have an opening in it, and so we gotta conjure one, we gotta dig one up. And so they scramble together all these little baby Zack Fair scenes, where Zack is in like some kind of pocket dimension, or maybe it's limbo, or maybe it's the afterlife. Because, you know, he's dead, and Biggs is dead, and he and Biggs are both dead. But also Cloud, Aeris, Red 13, Elmira, and Marlene, and please kill her off, I hate her so much. Kirahi are all there too, and they ain't dead. And like, Red 13 dies in the pocket dimension. Like, wow, what's going on there, man? And these scenes don't go anywhere, and Zack just dies regardless, I guess. It's like, why'd you put these here? They don't impact the story at all. And somebody on the development team agrees with me, because they just flat out give you an option to skip them in subsequent playthroughs, which is a tepid admittance, I think, to the fact that these scenes are just buckets of filler, here to produce some kind of introduction hook and tease the audience about whether or not they're gonna kill Aeris this go around. Spoiler alert, of course they were gonna kill Aeris. That's the second most interesting thing they did in the original Final Fantasy VII, and the story literally doesn't work if you chicken out of killing Aeris. Just like it doesn't work if you chicken out of killing Zack. The thing about Zack Fair is that he's more interesting as a guy who's dead. And the thing about dead people is they don't show up in your life anymore. And if you have your dead characters exist abstractly in some pocket dimension or whatever, that really lessens the impact of that character's death. You aren't fully killing that character off, and thus you're depriving the audience of the delicious emotions that they would otherwise feel regarding this dead character that's died. When a character dies, you're supposed to feel something. Speaking of which, number 7. Eris's death didn't make me feel anything. Perhaps the most famous moment in all of Final Fantasy, and my second favorite moment in Final Fantasy VII specifically, is the death of Eris at the conclusion of Disc 1. There are many reasons as to why this death in particular has resonated with so many people, but I'll boil it down to 3. Number 1, so strong and precious is Eris's personality that I don't even want to meet the person who wouldn't hang out with her. And indeed, every iteration of Final Fantasy VII must employ every technique you can muster to encourage a prospective spectator to like Eris, to empathize with her loneliness and her desperation for connection, and to cheer at her growths of character. Like, this is a really dark, really messed up world, but it's worth enduring just so that you can have the opportunity to hang out with people like Eris. Indeed, one of the neatest tricks Final Fantasy VII pulls is that it fills our party roster not exclusively with weirdos, and then casts Eris as a relatively normal person that one could easily relate to. Which one of us has not wished that a cute, if troubled weirdo would literally fall out of the sky and into our lives? The irony here, of course, is that within the context of Final Fantasy VII's bizarro world, we have number 2, Eris is actually ontologically special, being the last of the Cetra, and is thus more powerful than our other heroes. Her death instantly raises the stakes. The beautiful tragedy of Eris's character is that such a lineage grants her special powers, but also exacerbates her loneliness, and her status as a Cetra is what permanently divides her from others. As the theme of the inherent heroism of self-acceptance permeates all of Final Fantasy VII, Eris's character arc involves her accepting this about her and embracing who she is. Like, she didn't decide to be a Cetra, but she does decide what she's gonna do with that fact, and that's what makes her heroic. Also, number 3, the thing that really sticks with us about Eris is silence. When I think of Eris's death, my mind does not immediately go to this cutscene. It goes to this moment in Icicle Inn, the first town we visit after that critical moment. Waltz into the weapon shop and you will see that they have stopped selling Eris's weapon category. And you will note the vacancy here, where her portrait once occupied. I then think of the little pre-Gaia's Cliff climbing sequence, in which our buddy brigade gathers outside this guy's house, and Eris isn't there. I think of opening up the party selection screen and seeing that her portrait is missing. I think of our friends gathered upon the Highwind, each bearing new dialogue for us to enjoy after every post-Highwind acquisition plot beat, but there's no Eris to talk to us. Like, Eris isn't here anymore. Just like with real deaths, it isn't the moment itself that lingers with us, it's the absence. It's the first birthday you pass that they're not here, the first Christmas where they're not coming, the first time you realize that you could call their phone number, but nobody's gonna pick up. That's the power of this moment. So how did Final Fantasy VII Rebirth do with its rendition of this moment? Did it ruin it? Is the moment ruined? I'm sure that, like me, you've seen a variety of hot takes would espouse that they ruined it. So did they? Is it ruined? Well, I can't fully say that they ruined it, because like the moment is still here. It's just bigger, and it's louder, and it's longer. And bigger surely means better, and louder surely means more emotional, and longer surely means more epic, right? Well, there actually was a moment in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that did make me tear up. Was it Eris's death? No. It's actually this little moment where Red 13 looks back towards his statue dad and promises to make him proud.
I'll make you proud, Dad.
And like, for full context, Red 13 is my least favorite of the Buddy Brigade, and the Cave of the Gi is my least favorite section in all of the original Final Fantasy VII. And yet so precious are these little quiet character moments for me that this little exchange punctured straight through to my whole ladened heart and produced tears. And they didn't even have to put a 15-phase boss fight in here. So how come I didn't cry in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth when Eris died? In the game, the moment happens, but then like there's all this noise surrounding it, and then you just have to keep fighting bosses, and you just have to keep fighting bosses, and you just have to keep fighting bosses. And then she shows up so that you can have like a Ghost Lake fight with Sephiroth that I kept dying in because I couldn't figure out what the game wanted from me. And so like I had to do this fight like 6 times. And then you know, finally it was over, and we got to hit this cutscene. And like, here's the thing about this cutscene, man, is it's very obvious that Eris died. Like, all of our friends are sad. Eris is dead. And like, you know, I guess Cloud's brain mumbles are making him think that Eris is alive, which I guess could work. Like, I guess they could make it a moment in the Whirlwind Maze, and they could make it a little more impactful, because Sephiroth can be like,
"Oh, by the way, Cloud, my precious little fluffy boy, not only were you not in Nibelheim 5 years ago, but also, I totally killed Eris, and you didn't save her. That ghost what you've been seeing has only been phantasms of your own delusions."
And then I thought, oh no, is Eris gonna call us on the ghost phone? Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is too loud. It's too loud, and that's why I don't love it. And uttering this phrase to myself has placed 4 years worth of remake reticence into vital context. The reason I hate the plot ghosts from the first game is because they're too loud. The reason I view the ultimate reward for doing all the game's side content as being you don't have to do any of the side content anymore, because the side content is too loud. The reason why I force myself to walk literally everywhere, unless a story beat compels me to run, or a world puzzle has forced me to vehicle up a bird or a car or a plane that's now a boat, is because I wanted to prove to myself that walking through this beautiful, intricately designed world is more engaging, more captivating, and more emotionally resonant than any side quest or any minigame. Also, like, a moment of silence preceding a moment of big story sweeping changes, like, that's some great juxtaposition. Juxtaposition is good. I don't want to do any of these side quests, and I don't want to do any of these minigames. Even though I do think it's kind of neat that they grant me precious little opportunities to hang out with the Final Fantasy VII cast before any story events come to ruin their lives and end forever their fun times. And just like, another reason I forced myself to walk everywhere is because I was starved for quiet moments of luxurious reflection, which the original game provided in abundance. Scenes like our crew sitting quietly around the Cosmo Canyon bonfire and reflecting on their lives. In Rebirth, this scene takes place before a crowd that involves one character making a Hollywood hope speech about never giving up. It isn't a quiet, intimate moment. And like, the reason why this little exchange between Cloud and Eris, literally my favorite moment in the entire game, despite the fact that they didn't even put a 16-phase boss fight in here, is because it is just a quiet, intimate moment of vulnerability and character growth. And like, I yearn bodily for the scene after the Temple of the Ancients between Cloud and Barret, where Cloud's cool guy facade has cracked completely, and he finds himself babbling pathetically and incoherently about his potent fears, to which Barret responds with a character-appropriate vulnerability with Cloud. This scene doesn't happen, and like, I yearn spiritually to spend like 3 hours just wandering around the Forgotten Capital with no boss fights, no monsters, and no Sephiroth monologues. I can just soak up the foreboding atmosphere. And like, Sephiroth, he's just talking nonsense. I don't care. I don't care what he has to say. I guess what I'm trying to say is that what I yearn for the most in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy is I want it to believe in itself. And, you know, the game I wanted, it is in here, and I really appreciate that it's there. And that game I wanted is like a delicious chocolate cake. And Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a delicious chocolate cake that is covered in sugar, because all of this side content is like standing in the kitchen and shoveling handfuls of sugar in your mouth. And I don't want just sugar. I only want sugar insofar as it is an ingredient for a chocolate cake, and I don't like picking through all this sugar just to get to the chocolate cake. Less sugar, Final Fantasy VII, more cake. Well, that gets us 2/3 of the way through the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. Will the third one be a gut-busting, show-ending guitar solo, shredded straight from our dearest dreams, or will this remake project shrink into nothing and end sadly after a long, bitter decay, like what's gonna happen to my body in real life? I can't wait to find out, and I can't wait to have to purchase a PlayStation 6 in order to find out. I have been and shall remain Zachary Kusch, and I really liked Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but I did not love it. Well, we've only got one more Final Fantasy VII to go, and it's either going to redeem this whole remake trilogy, or it's going to destroy it. And I can't wait to find out which. Bye-bye!